Shurima will once again stretch to the horizon.
Shurima is a vast desert continent south of Runeterra's regions. Life here was hard and required adaptation to the sun and heat. Before human history, it was ruled by various creatures scuttling around through the sands, most sentient and which were the Bracken. The Bracken are a race of crystalline beasts, vast knowledge and wisdom. Their lives and memories were recorded within powerful crystals, and each member fused with until the day they die, when it was buried until the next generations claims their crystals and their past memories. As humans populated the desert empire arose and discovered a means of empowering their champions to godlike beings, in one generation there was a pair of brothers who proved themselves worthy. The brothers Nasus the scholar and general, and Renekton the warrior and soldier, were relenting in their defense of the empire known as Shurima. When Nasus became terribly ill under a mysterious withering sickness, he was chosen to be ascended. However, he became too weak to climb onto the day of ascension, till his brother chose to sacrifice himself to carry him up. However, while the light dimmed, everyone saw two ascended beings have been formed. Nasus, deeply contented warrior, in the form of a humanoid jackal, and Renekton, the endless brutal butcher, with a crocodile form. They had been chosen for their devotion to lead Shurima forward and took their places as the demigods of Shurima, alongside Sataka and the rest of the ascended host. They fought tirelessly for Shurima. Centuries passed as Renekton suffered an unpredictable side effect of his ascension. His humanity became weaker against restraining his killing instincts as he became progressively less controllable. One day a cataclysm ruined a desert city in the east, Icathia. They battled an invasion of monsters, and Sataka, despite being fated to see the sunrise of a day as Shuriman Emperor ruled the entire world, was killed. Renekton claimed the crescent-bladed axe of the warrior king of Icathia, breaking in half the axe as he broke the barrier's army. They left Icathia and its ruin behind them. Years later, the generation of Azir began. Azir was the youngest and least favored son of the current emperor, as his life was considered unimportant and set to study in the great library of Nasus, where by chance he befriended an unnamed slave boy who has assisted him in his study. Azir called the boy Xerath, which means one who shares. One day, Azir's family was attacked by assassins. Renekton defended the emperor, but all his sons was killed, apart from Azir, who was saved by Xerath. When the emperor refused to recognize his heroism, Azir promised Xerath one day they would be as brothers. Azir grew, and taking the advice of Xerath, he trained in the combat with Renekton. He tasked Xerath to study and gather knowledge wherever he could find it. He unlocked long-sealed libraries and delved into forgotten vaults and consulted with mystics entombed deep beneath the sands. Xerath used his nascent and magical abilities to kill the emperor and his newborn son. Azir became the emperor of Shurima. He stood above his empire, and Xerath, believing that the time has come for him to fulfill his purpose, stood beside him. But Azir did not say what Xerath truly desired. Azir continued to rule the empire on the backs of slaves. However, he merely was being patient. He knew he could not flat out free all the slaves as he desired, as many of the great noble houses depended on enforced labor for the vast wealth and power. He instead insinuated reforms to better the lives of slaves, proudly developed a plan to overturn millennia of traditions and eventually free them all. Xerath, unaware of these plans, he grew a disdain towards Azir for leading him on only to change nothing. Breaking his promise, he plotted to change his fate, and the fate of Shurima. He would steal the power of ascension. Xerath influenced Azir, building his pride and ego, to the point he announced he would become ascended. Xerath's plan was in motion, a beast of living fire, with the magical sarcophagus weakened, escaping the perfect time to draw Nasus and Renekton, Azir's only protection, away to retain it. Azir was determined to force the Sun Priest to call down the power of the sun into him. However, as Azir climbed the stairs of Ascension, he paused and turned towards Xerath and announced all Shurima that slaves were now free and Xerath would be considered his brother. Xerath was stunned and received everything Azir had promised. As he turned to continue to his ascension, Xerath realized that everything was in motion. He had continued his plan. With a roar of anger and grief combined, Xerath blasted Azir from his place on the dais, watching through tears as his former friend burned to ash. Xerath took Azir's place and the powerful sunlight beam filled him, reshaping his flesh into an ascending being. But the power of the ritual was not for him to take. The consequences of his betrayal of Azir was devastating. The unbound power of the sun destroyed Shurima, sundering in the temples and bringing the renewal of the city. The sun dispelled and the empire built by generations of emperors was done in a single day. As he drew ever more of the sun's power into his body, his mortal flesh was consumed and remade as a glowing vortex of arcane power. Nasus and Renekton sensed the great release of power and returned to the city, finding it destroyed. They battled the entity that was once Xerath, attempted to bind him to the magical sarcophagus they recovered, but Xerath shattering it to pieces, those pieces continued to surround him. They continued to fight in the ruins of the fallen empire, until Renekton dragged Xerath into depths of the tomb of the emperors, and commanded Nasus to seal them inside. Nasus, with no other option, reluctantly did as his brother ordered. Renekton and Xerath fell into a dark, sealed tomb for all of eternity.